Twisted people, it's your girl here, Chauncey K. Robinson, aka Twisted CKR, and hello, Happy New Year 2023. And we are already getting into it with a lot of great horror pictures and not so great horror pictures and not so great movies. But today I am here reviewing the new 2023 mega doll horror picture, however you want to say it, M3GAN. Yes, yes, yes. We are talking about M3GAN, the doll that came to slay, literally and figuratively. Overall, M3GAN is a fun, smart horror picture with a new female horror villain. And don't we need so many more of those in a genre that is lacking some quality women horror characters, aside from the Nun recently, which is debatable, I know. Is it the perfect horror movie? Not exactly. There are a few issues with it, which I'll get into in a little bit, but there are definitely many pros when it comes to this film that far outweigh any negative when it comes to M3GAN. Perhaps the biggest pro of this film is the main character and the main antagonist, which is one and the same, which is the character M3GAN. You know, usually sometimes when you have a horror picture, you can say, oh, the heroine is like our best character and the villain's kind of lacking, or vice versa. You know, you got some of those horror pictures where you're supposed to be rooting for the people, but you kind of end up rooting for the villain because the characters are just so not good. In this particular case, I would say there's a healthy balance because of the fact that M3GAN is somewhat our main character. Yes, there are other characters in this movie, but I would argue that M3GAN is the main character in this film, and she's also the main villain, which can get a little weird, right? When you really like the villain to a certain degree, it almost makes it hard to want to see them fail. But I think the way that this plot goes and the way that the character was handled, you're able to really enjoy M3GAN as a villain and as a main character, and still be okay with the fact that you may or may not be rooting for those who want to basically get rid of the killer doll. Which honestly can be very hard to do, but somehow this movie managed to do it really, really well. And I emphasize that mainly because of the fact that we have seen movies that have tried to do this thing when it comes to AI or a being that may not be inherently evil, but somehow grows to be that way based off of how it interprets reality. We saw that with the Child's Play remake, where they, totally changed the plot line, made it so that Chucky was some sort of AI doll, and it just was not good. It was horrible. And the way they did that, where you almost felt sorry for the Chucky AI just because of the way they played it and how its innocence was kind of taken from it because of what it was learning. M3GAN doesn't fall into that trap. It's a very capable film, and the villain slash protagonist is a very capable being, where you never feel like M3GAN's being taken advantage of. It does a good job to make it so you're never really feeling sorry for M3GAN, even though you can understand the plight of M3GAN. This movie deals with some deep questions, particularly when it comes to the question of existence and consciousness, which is not foreign to a movie that's dealing with the question of artificial intelligence, right? It's been done before. It's being talked about right now. That's why this movie is very relevant. I'll get to that in a second. But it also comes to the point of the existential crisis of being. What does it mean to exist? What does it mean when it comes to the boundaries of who gets to decide what is good and what is bad, what is too much and what is too little, what is evil versus what is good? And a lot of this is grappled with. This is a main theme of the movie, and not in a way that it stops the plot. It's actually interwoven in the plot in a very smart way, particularly through our protagonist slash antagonist. And I really, anytime, I'm just a philosophy lover, and anytime that you can interweave the idea of the question of existence into a movie, I'm all for it. Particularly horror pictures, because horror pictures, as you know, one of my fave genres, is something that really gives space for these kind of questions in a real powerful way depending on how it's used. And M3GAN definitely utilizes that. The question of AI, how relevant is that right now? Oh, it is so relevant. And I assure you, I'm not using one of those chat GTP things or whatever everyone does to make my videos. Oh my gosh. But isn't that a question, right? The question of what it means to be creating AI, to be creating artificial intelligence. And no, this isn't a new question. We've been grappling with that since Terminator came out, probably way sooner than Terminator, right? And so I feel like M3GAN, in a very succinct way, takes that on. What does it mean when we give certain technologies so much usefulness? Does it make it so that humans are almost obsolete, or should there be a balance in that? Should we make it so that, convenience somewhat takes over the idea of morality? Maybe everything shouldn't be convenient. Maybe we shouldn't be having it so that technology does so many things for us. We take that as convenience, and in reality, we may be making ourselves useless, or at least denying ourselves the ways of learning things that are needed for survival, and giving another being that power over us ultimately. And so I feel like M3GAN grapples with this in a very smart way. The kills. Oh, the kills are awesome. They're not overly drawn out, though, and I can appreciate that. For a movie that deals with a deadly doll, I feel like the gore and the horror was done in a way that is not gratuitous. It happens. It's quick. A lot of the kills are quick in this movie. So if you're expecting something that's really long, drawn out in terms of the death, you're not going to get that in this film. But the kills make sense for what happens, but it's not overly done. It's not a slasher flick where it's like kill after kill after kill after kill. No, it's very much done in a way that makes sense for what M3GAN's trying to achieve, which I think is fine, because you don't need always a horror picture that has to have a high body count for it to be effective. There's also a great balance of comedy and terror in here. There are some laugh out loud moments for sure. M3GAN plays up the camp in a lot of the situations, and there's a great commentary on consumerism when it comes to this film, but it never devolves so much into slapstick or one-ups and quips to the point where you don't feel the danger. And that is a great balancing act that this movie strikes. Now, there are some negatives when it comes to this film. I'm just going to warn you here and out that there is animal death in this movie. If you are a animal lover, there is about 2 scenes in this movie, both connected, that you might want to either close your eyes in or just move forward from. It's not drawn out, it's not shown on screen, but it's heavily implied. I thought it was unnecessary, and I just felt like with everything else that the movie did, it was almost kind of falling into a trope, an overdone trope in horror of hurting an animal that I feel like in 2023 we should be well past. The relationships between the supporting characters they're okay. But I think this is why I emphasize the fact that M3GAN is our main protagonist and antagonist. Not to the point where you don't care about any of the supporting characters, because you definitely do. They do great jobs here. All of the characters work. All of the characters fit in well. It's not overly crowded in this movie, but with that said, there is a secondary relationship in there between aunt and niece that I felt was a little bit underdeveloped in terms of the eventual payoff that you get in the movie, and I felt like it needed to be earned a little bit more, and you may feel that way as well. And this actually connects to my next critique when it comes to the film that I felt like it fell short in, which is basically the ending. I felt like the ending kind of came very quickly. I mean, I'm not saying there was a lot of build up necessarily, because like I said, this movie, everything counts. My issue, I guess, is when we got to the ending and how it hit the climax and everything started to happen. I almost felt like maybe it was too quick the way things happened. Not necessarily anticlimactic, but more like, oh, okay, we're already here and this is already happening. Wow, we got here kind of quick, didn't we? And then it's done. And it was kind of like I enjoyed the ending, but I also felt like it was not lackluster. I can't put my finger on it. It just felt like it could have been better developed. And and that's really a low bar kind of critique because so much in this movie is so good, but when it came to the ending and the final battle scene and things like that, I felt like it could have been developed better. So you may feel a little dissatisfied when it comes to the final about 10 minutes of the movie. My overall grade for M3GAN is a solid A. I really enjoyed this movie. I am a Chucky fan, and I know there's going to be definitely comparisons with this, and even maybe Annabelle in its own way, even though Annabelle is a totally different realm of possession of doll. But I would say that M3GAN stands on its own. Just like Chucky, just like Annabelle, these three types of characters are so very unique, and I'm just so glad we're getting so many very good types of scary doll movies. And M3GAN stands on its own with a very unique execution, and so this movie is highly recommended. Let me know if you watched M3GAN Twisted Fam. Did you love it? Did you like it? Did you hate it? Are you comparing it to Chucky and Annabelle? Out of the three, who would win in a fight? Let me know. Comment down below and keep it twisted out there.